I have a surprise for our anniversary. My name is Michael. I'm 37, run quality control at North Peak Engineering in Phoenix, and I thought I knew my wife. Melissa had been acting different for months, not angry different, happy different, too happy. She hummed while doing dishes, bought new clothes, started going to the gym again after 2 years of excuses. Our 10th anniversary was approaching, and she kept mentioning this surprise. The way she said it made my stomach turn, like she was savoring something I wasn't supposed to understand yet. What kind of surprise? I asked one evening, watching her apply makeup at 8 p.m. for what she called a book club meeting. You'll see. She kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark I wiped off after she left. Book club meetings that lasted until midnight, weekend errands that took 4 hours, phone calls she took in the garage. I wasn't stupid, but I also wasn't the type to snoop through her things or follow her around like some jealous husband. I figured if she wanted out, she'd tell me. The surprise came 3 days before our actual anniversary. I got home early from work around 3 p.m. because a shipment delay killed our afternoon schedule. Melissa's car was in the driveway next to a silver BMW I didn't recognize. I walked through the front door, calling her name. No answer. Their voices carried down from upstairs. Melissa's laugh. A man's voice I recognized but couldn't place immediately. I climbed the stairs. Our bedroom door was cracked open. "Michael should be home soon," the man said. "Are you sure about this?" "Trust me," Melissa replied. "It's perfect timing." I pushed the door open wider. They were both dressed, sitting on the edge of our bed like they were waiting for something. Melissa wore the red dress I'd bought her for Christmas. The man was Raymond Torres, the financial advisor she'd introduced me to at a neighborhood D barbecue 6 months earlier. Clean-cut guy in his 40s who drove the BMW and talked about investment opportunities. "Surprise," Melissa said, standing up with a smile that made my blood cold. They weren't undressed. They weren't scrambling to cover themselves. They were just sitting there like this was supposed to happen. Like I was supposed to join some conversation I'd walked into the middle of. But the way they looked at each other told me everything. The way Raymond's hand rested on her knee. The way she leaned into him when she laughed. I stood in the doorway for maybe 10 seconds. Neither of them said anything else. Melissa kept smiling like she was proud of herself. I turned around, walked downstairs, grabbed my keys, and left. I drove to the Marriott downtown and checked in for a week, paid cash, turned off my phone, sat on the bed, and stared at the wall until dark. Years of marriage. We'd met at Arizona State when I was finishing my engineering degree. She was studying marketing, had big plans for her own consulting business. Smart woman. Beautiful woman. The kind who turned heads when she walked into a room. We bought the house in Scottsdale 5 years ago. Split everything, 50-50, even though my salary at North Peak was higher. She eventually gave up on the consulting idea and worked part-time at a boutique downtown. Said she wanted to focus on us, maybe start a family someday. That someday never came. Every time I brought up kids, she found a reason to wait. More money, better timing. Her career, my career. Always something. Raymond had appeared at the Hendersons' barbecue last summer. Tom Henderson introduced him as a financial advisor who'd helped their portfolio grow 15% in 6 months. Impressive numbers. Melissa spent most of that evening talking to him about investment strategies. "We should diversify our portfolio," she said on the drive home. "Raymond thinks we're being too conservative." I didn't think much of it. Melissa had always been interested in money, ways to make more of it. She started having coffee with Raymond to discuss our finances, then lunch meetings, then weekend sessions where they'd spread papers across our dining room table and talk about market trends. "He's really helping us," she'd say when I questioned the frequency of their meetings. "You should trust me on this." Trust. The word felt different now, sitting in a hotel room while my wife entertained her lover in our bedroom. The warnings had been there. Phone calls where she'd step outside, credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to, a gym membership she claimed was for yoga classes, but she never brought home a yoga mat. 3 months ago, Raymond had suggested I introduce him to some of my colleagues at North Peak. Professional networking, he called it, mutual benefit. I'd given him contact information for 5 guys from work, engineers with decent salaries and retirement funds they wanted to grow. Tom Henderson had recommended Raymond, and the numbers he showed looked legitimate. These are good people, I'd told Raymond when I handed over their information. Don't waste their time unless you can deliver. Of course, he'd said, shaking my hand. I appreciate the trust. That word again, trust. I ordered room service and ate in silence. Tomorrow I'd start figuring out what came next. The third day at the hotel, I called a private investigator. His name was Frank Sullivan, retired Phoenix police CDIV who now handled divorce cases and corporate fraud. I found his number online and met him at a diner on Camelback Road. Standard cheating spouse investigation? He asked, after I explained the situation. Start there, I said, but I want to know everything. Her finances, his business, how long this has been going on, what they're planning. Frank was in his 60s, gray-haired, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen every kind of betrayal. This going to be one of those cases where you want me to find dirt so you can destroy them? I want the truth. All of it. Truth costs extra. You sure you want to know everything? I nodded. Frank called me 2 days later. We need to meet. Bring a notebook. This time we met at his office, a small space above a coffee shop in central Phoenix. Frank had 3 manila folders on his desk. Your wife's been having an affair with Raymond Torres for 8 months, he started. But that's not the interesting part. He opened the first folder. Bank statements, investment records, correspondence. Raymond Torres runs a Ponzi scheme. Classic setup. Uses early investors' money to pay fake returns to later investors. Creates appearance of success to attract more victims. My stomach dropped. Your wife knows. She's been recruiting victims through her social connections, gets a cut of every investment she brings in, 5% commission on initial deposits. Frank opened the second folder, photos of Melissa meeting with people I recognized, neighbors, friends from church, women from her book club that apparently did exist. She's been working as his recruiter for 6 months. The affair provides cover for their business meetings. Romance keeps them both motivated. The third folder contained the worst news. Remember those colleagues you introduced to Raymond? All 5 invested. Total of $430,000 from your contacts alone. The money's gone. Raymond's been paying fake returns with new investor deposits, but the well's running dry. I stared at the documents, names I recognized, people who trusted my recommendation. How much total? I asked. Estimated $2.3 million from about 40 investors. Your wife's recruitment network brought in roughly 60% of that money. Frank leaned back in his chair. There's more. Raymond's planning to disappear soon, liquidating assets. Your wife's been helping him move money to offshore accounts. I sat there processing the information. My marriage was over. That hurt, but I'd already accepted it. What made me sick was knowing that people I cared about had lost their savings because they trusted me. What kind of evidence do you have? I asked. Frank smiled. Enough to bury them both. I spent the next day reading through Frank's files, financial records, photographs, recorded phone conversations. The scope of their operation was bigger than I'd imagined. Melissa hadn't just been cheating. She'd been systematically targeting our social circle for financial fraud. The evidence showed Raymond promising 15% annual returns on conservative investments. He used legitimate investment terminology and showed doctored portfolio statements to prove his track record. New investors received their promised returns for the first few months, money that actually came from newer victims. Melissa's role was crucial. He provided credibility and access. When she recommended Raymond to her book club friends or neighbors, they trusted her judgment. When I introduced him to my colleagues, they trusted mine. Frank had recordings of their phone conversations discussing strategy. Michael's engineer friends are perfect, Melissa said in one call. They understand numbers but not finance. Easy targets. Hearing her voice say those words made something break inside me. I called Frank from my hotel room. I want to confront them directly, set up a meeting. Bad idea, Frank said. You tip them off, they'll run. Raymond's already moving money offshore. You spook them now, your friends never see a dime. Then what do you suggest? Let me keep gathering evidence another week, maybe two. Then we involve federal authorities. SEC handles investment fraud, FBI handles wire fraud and money laundering. How long before they disappear? Hard to say, but Raymond's been more careful lately. Fewer new investors, more calls to banks in the Cayman Islands. I hung up and stared at the hotel room walls. 2 weeks felt like forever. The next morning I broke my own rule and drove past the house. Melissa's car was gone. Raymond's BMW sat in my driveway like he owned the place. I parked across the street and called Frank. Change of plans. I'm going to talk to them. Michael, don't. I hung up and walked to my front door. Raymond answered, wearing one of my old Arizona State shirts and holding a cup of coffee. Coffee from my kitchen made with my coffee maker. Michael, he didn't look surprised. Melissa said you were staying somewhere else. This is still my house. Of course, come in. The casual way he invited me into my own home made my hands shake. Melissa was at the kitchen table with papers spread out, financial documents, investor statements. She looked up when I walked in. We need to talk, she said. About what? About our future. About Raymond's business opportunities. About the mistake you made walking out. She said it like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I know about the Ponzi scheme, I said. Raymond's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Melissa's face went pale. I don't know what you mean, Raymond said. $2.3 million, 40 investors. My colleagues at North Peak lost $400,000 because I vouched for you. Melissa stood up. You don't understand what you're talking about. I understand perfectly. You've been recruiting victims for him, getting paid to destroy our friends' lives. Raymond set down his coffee cup. Michael, you're obviously upset about the marriage situation, but business is business. Your friends made investment decisions as adults with fraudulent information. If you can prove that, take it to court, Melissa said. Otherwise, you're just making accusations. The coldness in her voice shocked me. This wasn't the woman I'd married. This was someone I'd never met. I want you both out of my house, I said. Raymond smiled. Actually, that's not going to happen. See, legally speaking, this is Melissa's house too. Arizona is a community property state. She has every right to be here. And I have every right to bring my business partner to my home, Melissa added. Business partner, that's what she called him now. I left without another word. They were both smiling when I walked out. Back at the hotel, I called Frank and told him about the confrontation. You gave them a warning, he said. They'll accelerate their timeline now. Good, let them run. You have enough evidence to prosecute? Maybe, but I focused on something else. Something bigger. Frank arrived at my hotel room 20 minutes later with a new folder. After you left today, I decided to dig deeper into Raymond's background. Turns out this isn't his first Ponzi scheme. He spread out documents on the small hotel table. Raymond Torres is actually Raymond Terrell. He ran a similar operation in Colorado 3 years ago. Defrauded investors out of $1.8 million. Fled before prosecution. How's he operating under a different name? False identity, fake social security number, real driver's license and credit history under the Torres name. Professional job. Frank opened another section of the folder. But here's the interesting part. Your wife didn't just meet him at a barbecue. She sought him out. Found him through online forums where people discuss investment fraud. She knew exactly who he was. The room felt like it was spinning. Melissa initiated contact with a known fraudster. More than that, she provided startup capital, $25,000 from your joint savings account. Took it out in cash withdrawals over 2 months. Raymond used that money to establish credibility with his first few investors. Frank showed me bank statements I'd never seen. Cash withdrawals Melissa had made while I was at work. She's not just a recruiter, she's a partner, equal investor in the fraud. How did she find him? Online research. She'd been studying investment fraud for over a year before she made contact. downloaded guides on how Ponzi schemes work, participated in forums where fraudsters share techniques. Frank pulled out printed web pages, Melissa's user account on fraud forums discussing victim psychology and recruitment strategies. She planned this whole thing. The affair is secondary, business first, pleasure second. I sat on the hotel bed reading through Melissa's online posts. She'd written detailed analyses of how financial fraud worked, discussed the psychology of victim selection, shared strategies for building trust with potential investors. One post made my blood run cold. The key is using your existing relationships. People who trust you personally will trust your business recommendations without proper due diligence. How long has she been planning this? I asked. Based on her online activity, at least 18 months. She studied multiple fraud cases, learned what worked and what led to prosecution. Then she found Raymond and proposed a partnership. Frank closed the folder. There's something else. They're planning to disappear next week. Booked flights to Mexico under false names. Raymond's been liquidating his remaining assets. They think you'll take a few months to figure out the scope of the fraud. They're running together. Partners in crime,